Hey everybody, welcome to the first episode of the NAM 1965 channel that I just started. First off, the whole channel isn't dedicated to just Vietnam in 1965. That just happens to be the year that my father went there with the U.S. Army to carry out his tour of duty. First off, I'm going to take you on a little tour of my Vietnam War collection that I have set up here. And then get into more detail as to exactly why I started collecting and my father's involvement in Vietnam as well. So this is my old bedroom at my parents' house from when I was a child. I still use it to house many of my items, and this is what I've turned into my Vietnam War, somewhat of a museum, because I really wanted to share all of my collection with people and maybe answer some questions about the Vietnam War, use it as a learning experience, especially for the younger generation like my son, who is now 15, and I'm sure he doesn't learn much about it in school. And I decided to display it like this so everybody knows what they're looking at. I actually label everything, and if it has a date, I'll actually show the date that is stamped on it or marked on it. Some of these items are my father's when he served. That is his uniform. I have this video display as well, which I use to show a slideshow with multiple photos. I'd say there's maybe 400 on this whole slideshow. Of course, no one has to sit and watch the entire thing. And it also has music that runs underneath it and sound bites from different presidents speaking about the war and their experience with that. I have some personal items. I have some of your basic collectibles that a lot of collectors strive to acquire. And I really wanted a well-rounded collection. None of the weapons are real. They're not live fire. I do have one that is real, and I will go into more detail about that one. It was actually a bring back from Vietnam, which is pretty cool. It's a captured item. So I just wanted to show this to you, kind of an overall look at the collection. And then what I'll be doing is going into each item in more detail. So the main reason I started collecting is because of my father, who served in Vietnam in 65 and 66. He had told me a story maybe 4 years ago around the beginning of COVID in 2020. He told me a story of a time when he was supposed to carry a radio on a patrol, and he got pulled off of that patrol to do something else. I won't go into detail, but he was pulled from that patrol, and the gentleman who took his place, his name was Ronald Nickerson, he was actually killed during that patrol. Him and a captain, they triggered a mine, and they were both killed. And that got me thinking, that could have been my father. So I wanted to do something. I wanted to learn more about the Vietnam War, and I thought maybe I would make a short film. I've dabbled in filmmaking, so I started collecting things. You know, uniforms, weapons, gear, everything to tell my story, or a story. I wasn't sure what it was going to be yet, but that did have an impact on me, so that started my collection. On the Vietnam Veteran Memorial Fund virtual Wall of Faces website, I was actually able to order a rubbing from the wall, the actual wall in Washington, D.C., of Ronald Nickerson's name. And I received that, and that is actually a part of my collection, and he is honored on one of my walls. I actually printed out the picture of his face from the Virtual Wall of Faces website, but the rubbing is the actual one that a volunteer at the wall actually did for me. My father was drafted March 18th of 1964. We hadn't really committed troops to Vietnam beyond advisors until that time, so they must have known something was coming up. My dad completed his basic training and also his advanced infantry training at Fort Ord, California. From there, he went to Fort Drum, Massachusetts, where, of all things, he was trained in winter mountain rescue, just to be sent to the tropical jungles of Vietnam, which I find very interesting. He also did some of that training in White Mountains, New Hampshire. My dad shipped out and arrived in South Vietnam in May of 1965. These are all photos that my dad took while in Vietnam. Unfortunately, he said he took a lot more photos, but they were in a duffel bag with other personal items that was stolen. So unfortunately, we will never get to see those photos. According to my dad, he was in B Company, 1st Battalion, 2nd Infantry of the 1st Infantry Division. That is also known as the Big Red One. He initially went over in a rifleman platoon, but then was switched over to a heavy weapons platoon. And for the record, my dad is still with us. He is alive and kicking. He just celebrated his 83rd birthday. And here he is with me and my son, William, who is actually named after him. So once I started collecting items and props for this short film I intended to shoot, still haven't done it, everything just kind of snowballed. I started learning more and more about the Vietnam War itself. Found that very intriguing, and also the collectability of certain items, the different patterns and variations of equipment. So next time I'm going to dive a little more into my dad's items, things that he brought back from Vietnam and his time there. So if this is something you're interested in, please like and subscribe, and I will see you next time. Thank you.